Hi everyone, my name is Randy Cummins. I'm with Black Swan Bodywork, and I'm here with my friend Lucy. Hi Lucy. And today we're going to introduce my course in Integrative Bodywork. And Integrative Bodywork is, I think, the best of all worlds of bodywork. It incorporates different techniques from different areas of the world, different modalities to help get the maximum effect that we can. So in this integrative work, some of the things that we can integrate into the work, other than the technique, are some of the assessments. And the assessments are a series of stretches and also self-stretches for the person you're working on. So they not only act as an assessment, but also these stretches can be done by the person at home or anywhere to help keep their body balanced and to help alleviate some of the pain that they're suffering. So it's a twofold situation. So I'm going to ask Lucy to do a simple forward, but before you do anything, it's always good to just take a casual observation of the person to see if you pick up on anything visually. So I'm going to have Lucy turn away here so that we can just observe some of her lower back, and just through a trained or untrained eye, you see a little bit more of a stretching here and a bunching here. So there's a little tightness. It's not particularly bilateral, but it has to do on one side more. So I would suspect that one side is going to be a little tighter than others. So if you can turn back, please, Lucy, and I'm going to ask you to fold forward. But when you do, just keep your knees just slightly relaxed, not so exaggerated, and that you're going to bend at the waist. And let your head go down and your arms come down. And then just go, and you feel there's some pull already? Yeah. Yes, she says yes. So, you know, we can improve on that through some simple integrative work and some stretches. And you feel any tightness through your legs here?
Yeah, tightness in the back of the legs and also back.
Okay, so just come up nice and easy. So just that simple forward fold gives us a little information. You know, she has definitely restricted range of motion because of the shortness in her lower back, and that it may not necessarily stem entirely from just lower back, but since she has hamstring tightness, I would suspect that there's some tightness in her hips, which she did to a certain extent say she has some tightness in her hips. So we're going to do just a few more assessment stretches, and then we'll get into the work. So if you sit here, please face that way, I think. And it's basically the same stretch, but with your legs extended. And what we're looking for here is also how her body reacts to the forward fold, but in this position. So as we have Lucy in the seated position now, which is basically going to be the same stretch as the standing position, it's a very good way of having the person do a sustained stretch, even better than standing, because it could be putting some excessive strain on the lower back in the standing forward fold. But here we're going to show a few things to help support it. So first of all, as far as the assessment goes, I'm going to ask you to fold forward again. Just let your arms be outside here and let your head drop a little bit. And you see that it starts to bind pretty quickly. And because her knees are off the ground, that means that there's tightness in her hamstrings here, or you feel that? So I'm going to ask you just to sit up again, and then what we're going to do to alleviate that is to put this bolster under her knees, and then we'll see if she can go a little bit more comfortably in her forward fold. Go, if you would, please. That she's gone into it further just from that. So if you do have lower back pain, and it feels stiff, and you feel like it's being compressed, this position for the person to do it is very good. And I would suggest putting something underneath their knees. But even so, you could, would you sit up just a little bit more? If you can't come down that far, but you want to hold this position a little longer, because it is quite beneficial, because tight muscles respond more to sustained stretch, sustained compression. It helps alleviate the connective tissue around the muscle, and the muscle will relax a little bit more, and you'll get a little bit more movement. You could stack a bunch of pillows up here if you can't bend that far forward, and you can just lay into it and stay there for 3-4 minutes just to help really alleviate the pain. So this is a nice assessment here. And then I'm going to take this out, and we're just going to do one more seated thing just to see. I'm going to ask Lucy to do some rotation just to see if there's more tightness to one side than the other. So if you rotate this way, if that feels okay that way. And it's a pretty normal range of motion that you expect from a healthy young woman. So if you come back and go the other way, and that's a little bit more restricted that way. So again, it's just giving you some more information. Okay, wonderful. So we're going to start to go right directly into the back and the hips, and I'm going to ask Lucy to go face down. And if you would please, with your head over there, I think that would be very good. And a couple of things when working, and again, some nice common sense things. And therapists in their training in the different schools, they have been showing this, hopefully, in regards to correct placement of the person either on the table or the mat. A lot of times when people have a lower back pain, it just makes this curve a little bit too much. So I'm going to put just a slight lift here. This is just a nice towel that I've folded a couple times, and I'm going to place it right across the front of Lucy's hips, because it takes that curve out just a little bit. Is that okay, Lucy? Okay. So that usually makes it a little better. So what to do? What to do when having lower back pain? We just do some nice general feeling, you know. This is where we come into some nice contact and just feel for tightness. You know, it's easy to assess when you just go in and, like here, it's easily felt that this muscle is tighter than it really feels like it should be. You feel this? Yes, sir. So, and where we're feeling it is just below the ribs and just above the hips. So you can go easily in there and feel. So we're just going to do some nice loosening. So one of the better ways of loosening and not putting a lot of strain on yourself is just keep your hands nice and relaxed and just let your weight shift forward a little bit. So we're just going to start to generally loosen the lower back. I mean, what's best than if someone's hurting in an area that you just naturally go to that area, but you just want to start very slowly. Remember, if there's pain already, you really want to pay attention to how you go in. You want to go in generally in stages, right? You want to start slowly, do some nice assessment with your hands, and then just gradually add a little bit more pressure. And because if there are some tightness, there also might be some, for lack of a better way of saying, an emotional holding in the back, right? So it's good to work with the person's breath. So Lucy, if you take a nice inhale and then exhale, I'm just leaning and I'm moving the muscle down and away from the spine, just to create just a little loosening. And you notice my body is open and my arms are extended, and I'm just letting my weight come through my arms and in to her back. So it's not more of a pushing, but more of a leaning in. And we'll just do some nice general loosening on one side. And then just using the fingertips, I'm going to just go into the muscle. So just to be clear, the spine here in the center of the back, so this is your the vertebrae, the individual bones of your back. You're not pushing directly onto the spine, but on either side. So you want to try to loosen the muscles on either side and just create a little softness in the muscle. Because the muscle is constricted, it's shortened, either from gravity compressing down, or a lot of times when there's lingering pain, it has a lot to do with repetition, like how you're using your body. You know, our body stores memories in a lot of different ways. And one of the ways is through held emotion and held muscle tightness. So I just do some nice general loosening here. Right. And a nice position here is called center position, where you're right over the center, and I'm going to apply a little pressure onto the base of the spine called the sacrum, this flat bone here where the hip bones connect to, and we're going to try to create just a little length in this shortened muscle here in the lower back, because this is where her lower back pain is. It's not up higher, but it's basically focused or centered rather below the 12th rib and above the iliac crest. So I'm going to apply a little pressure onto the sacrum and then slightly down, just to create a little loosening here. You can take your hands and place them right in and just lean up and stretch that way. So pressure's okay, Liz? So leaning in, and you can see the fabric of her top is mimicking the muscle fiber. So where there's compression here or shortness in here, if you stabilize one and lean up with the other, it stretches it out a little bit. It creates a little bit more length, which helps decompress the lower back, and hopefully after a few sessions and a few self stretches, hopefully that she'll do at home to help alleviate the pain, she'll feel a lot of good relief. So as we advertise, it is an integrative work. So this is pretty straightforward assessment, Western based, and some of the things that I like to include are what's called acupressure points, or like I mentioned earlier, sometimes in Western medicine they're called Subo points, but basically they're concentrated areas in the body that when you do find them and you'll press, and sometimes we'll press with our thumbs or our fingers or our elbows, that with a little sustained pressure it helps to alleviate some of the stagnation. It helps alleviate some of the accumulated pain in the area. So in working with Lucy, I'm going to feel for her spine, and then I'm just going to come right out from here. And when you feel on someone, or if you can feel on yourself somehow, you feel the spine, and on either side there's like a little valley on either side of the spine. Okay, and we're just going to take our thumbs and sink right into that little groove. And we're going to work just below the 12th rib and right up to the top of the hip. So nice and easy. Just keep your thumbs relatively in line so you don't put a lot of pressure on them. You don't want to bend them back because that causes a lot of hyper extension, and it'll just start causing you pain, which is definitely not one of the focuses here in the integrative work. You're trying to help alleviate pain, not cause pain in yourself. So feel for the spine, come out, and then just sink in. And how deep do you go? Well, again, it's individual to the person you're working on, but you want to sink in basically until you feel some resistance in their muscles. So you're going to sink in, and then you're going to noticeably feel, if I want to go any deeper, I'm going to really have to apply a lot of pressure, but you don't really have to. And then you're going to come right up onto the sacrum, onto this flat bone, and you just press right into on either side of this bone. If you have a chance to look at any anatomical charts or a skeleton, you'll marvel, hopefully, at our internal structure. The spine is amazing, and what it gives as far as support and flexibility. And the components of the spine, where it ends is the sacrum, and it's a flat bone, and you'll notice that there's holes in the sacrum, and those holes are there for nerves to come through. And when the muscles and the covering over the holes, over the sacrum, tightens because of restriction either above or below, it can impinge the nerves and reduce the blood supply, and the muscles start to get tight. So you want to go right onto the sacrum with some nice pressure, just sinking in. Another aspect of integrative work is if we know some techniques that we want to apply, but because of either your level of experience or else your own body type, meaning a bigger person, a smaller person, heavier or whatever, that the integrative techniques accommodate for different body sizes and different skill levels. So if you're trying to create some length like we were before, and pressing down is too much for you, a very efficient way of doing it is coming to the head of the person and just placing your hands on here and simply leaning forward, right? So you can hold sustained pressure a lot easier this way, but it's a lot less taxing. I happen to be a smaller person myself, so that a lot of these techniques that I'm sharing with you are accommodated for my own particular size. So I try to make it as efficient as possible with the least amount of effort, so that I can focus on proper breath, proper technique, and also pay attention to what the person is feeling. So this is a nice, easy way for sustained pressure here. So here with more sustained pressure here, so just allow yourself to relax both the giver and the receiver. And then release. Okay. So earlier we were speaking about acupressure points, and I'd just like to give some general location of some of the commonly applied acupressure points to help alleviate pain in the lower back, particularly right now. I had mentioned earlier using the spine as a sense of landmark so that we know where we're at. And more generally, when you're working on someone with lower back pain and you do some of the things that we're suggesting in this course, that we're going to see if the points have any effect on the tight muscles. So if you just feel for the ribs, okay, and they're pretty easily felt. And the reason I'm calling attention to the ribs is so that you can use them as a good bony landmark to find out where these common acupressure points are. So the ribs, and then the ribs come to an end here, and you'll feel some hardness, and then softness. And this is the area that we're going to be applying the acupressure points. So it's below the ribs and above the hip, right here. So when you feel, you're going to come in from the side more, and you're just going to come in from the side and direct your pressure towards the center. And you're going to come in and you're going to pretty quickly come into a harder area, and that's the side of a muscle there, the lower longissimus and also quadratus lumborum, a little anatomical term for the musculature in the lower back. So the pressure is going to be not so much straight down, but towards the midline. So either thumb or tips of your fingers, you can go in at an angle and just go right up against the side of the muscle. And I would say that you should hold these points, and you can do them bilaterally if you like. If you want to do two sides at the same time, it's quite nice technique, but one side is just fine. And you want to hold for 2 or 3 full breaths. And I use breaths to accommodate time passage, because the more that we can focus on our breath, the better we are connecting with the person we're working on, and the more we feel, right? The more we feel. We have to be as present as possible when we're doing the work. We're here for that person, so we want to be as present as possible. So holding, and then you just release, and then just come down a little bit more and do the same thing. So you feel for the hardness, you move towards the center and hold it. So you're going to work the whole area between the 12th rib and the hip, or the iliac crest, which is only usually about that long. And if you're working on someone and there's very little room, you can ask them to have their arms overhead, like extending overhead, like a little stretch, because that lifts the rib cage a little bit. That lifts the rib cage a little bit, and you have a little bit more area to work on here. And also for the person who is having this lower back pain, extension exercises are very good, because as you can see, it adds length to the structure, right? So when you add length, you naturally decompress. And this is what we're always looking at. We're trying to decompress, right? So So these acupressure points here are quite nice. There's 2 or 3 of them. Just start right below the 12th rib and come down until you come right up onto the hip. Okay? So this is for lower back, very common. And then we'll just allow ourselves to move into the hip. In dealing with lower back pain, of course, we go right into the area where they're feeling the most. But also, too, because of our nature and because of the structure we're dealing with and our three-dimensional existence here, we have to look at all different perspectives. So both above and below the areas that are causing the pain. So here we're going to move into the hips and do some general loosening of the hips. You know, the hips, when you say hips, they incorporate different muscles. So there's the gluteal muscles, which give the contour, and then there's also the deeper muscles, the deep lateral rotators that attach to the leg bone and let your legs move in and out to a certain extent from the hips. So we're going to loosen the hip a little bit. So I'm just using the flat of my fist and just through a nice extended arm, just leaning in just to get a little looseness here. You know, and just trying to press in and out to try to pump a little bit, to try to bring some motion into something that perhaps is a little stagnant. So there's different ways of doing general loosening. I try not to do this way because it puts too much pressure on my wrist, and especially if you're doing this over and over again, no matter how aware or compassionate you are, structurally, a hyperextension of the wrist, not so good after a while. So when you're doing something, you try to keep a nice neutral wrist, so the flat of the fist. And if you're working on someone very big or they're very tight, there's different approaches, you know, in this integrative form. So one of the things you can do is use your knee and just let your knee just ease in there a little bit so that you can use your body weight and you can have some nice sustained pressure using your body weight. And one of the advantages of this is it doesn't harm your wrists at all. But also, too, the contour of the knee fits really well into the gluteal area. So you want to make sure that you're below the hip so you're not pressing on the bone and you go right into the soft tissue. So a little bit of an angle where you can just lean in is quite nice. So we're just doing some general loosening first before we go in and do any more specific acupressure points. Okay. Another way, like I mentioned when we're doing assessment, we want to introduce movement into the body because this is where the imbalances come from. You know, if we never moved, we probably wouldn't have a lot of pains because we wouldn't be interacting with gravity the way we do. So adding motion when you're loosening the body is also very beneficial. So easy here, again with the extended arm and flat fist, but now I'm adding motion of the leg in to help activate the muscle a little bit. So nice loosening here, and you get a nice rhythm. Another way of doing it is to bring the leg out a little bit. And again, I'm showing different ways to accommodate different skill levels, different body types. So we're still going to be loosening this area. We use the fist. Now I'm just going to stand up a little bit, and I'm just going to use the flat of my foot just to sink in there a little bit. So again, I can just use my body weight a little bit more efficiently and just do a nice flat-footed compression into the hip to try to get a little looseness in there, sinking in. This position of the legs helps accommodate the openness of the hip. So if that doesn't feel right in regards to how you match up with the person you're working on, or if you're feeling a little unsteady about doing this, then I would suggest working as close to the ground as possible. And one thing that we can use as a very viable tool in integrative bodywork is our forearms. So We're going to do the same application to the hips, but now we're going to use the forearm. And one thing I would recommend is to do a little palpation first of the area. You know, it's no different than if you walk into a room, you want to accommodate yourself and make yourself familiar with the surroundings so you can get by. Here, the hips have two areas that I'd like you to be aware of. The sacrum, which is the bone, and the top of the leg bone, okay, of the femur. So you want to be in between those areas, in the soft tissue, right? So we're going to use our forearm and just sink right into there. You'll notice I'm on two knees, my arms in front of me supporting my weight, and then I can just ease in with my forearm into the soft tissue. And I'm just going to work that area. You know, one of the things I hear when we do these instructional videos, and our audience indeed are existing body workers, massage therapists, but also people, you know, who aren't in the field per se, but also have a nice feel for wanting to help alleviate pain with others. So one of the things they say is that they get fatigued quite quickly when they're working. And one of the things I would suggest to you is focus on your breath a little bit more. You know, if you're not breathing deeply and you're doing this, you start to tire quite easily. So when I apply pressure, I'm focusing on my breath, and I'm inhale, and on the exhale I lean in. So it's a nice complete motion where you inhale and move to another area, and exhale, lean in. And here it's easy to have some sustained pressure. And you're just going to work that area. Some nice gentle loosening. Now, after loosening the muscles, and because we're layered creatures, you know, we want to do some loosening so that we can go deeper in and engage there's a very active acupressure point here, right in the center of the gluteals. And it's in Chinese medicine, it's on the gallbladder meridian, but it's called jumping circle. So it's a very appropriate name, because if you go in too deep, too quickly, with too much pressure, the person usually does react by trying to get away from you, to jump away from you. But where you're going is into the belly of one of the muscles of the hip, the deeper muscles, one of the lateral rotators, the Piriformis muscle. And one of the reasons this really creates a lot of tension in the hip is because it attaches to the sacrum, the base of the spine, this flat triangular bone, and then it attaches right to the head of the top of the leg bone, the femur. So when it contracts, it just pulls everything towards the midline. And it also has a tendency to turn your feet out a little bit. So when someone is lying down, if your feet are excessively turned out, then there's a good situation presenting that there might be some tightness in the piriformis. So using those landmarks, the sacrum and the greater trochanter, just come in about halfway and then just lean in towards the center and see if they have any additional sensitivity in there. Yes, as you can tell by her foot jerking, that's what we call a working sign. You know, if you press here and her body part moves that way, that's a working sign. So you're in the right area. So you just want to hold the point again. So one thing I would recommend, since you're going through thicker muscle here, thicker than the lower back, is maybe use one thumb over the other. So you have a braced thumb so you don't put too much pressure here. And you just got to sink in until you feel a resistance and then hold. And like we mentioned earlier, to make this work more efficient, to make this work yield maximum result, you want to focus yourself on your breath. Because experienced body worker or novice who's just trying to make someone else feel good, you know, the technique part is only half of the equation that we're working with. You have to internally be in a good place. You want to be aware of what you're doing, and the breath is the best way of not only aligning yourself internally, but also maximizing how you use your body. So we'll just do a little sustained pressure here. So especially as we continue to adjust the hip, you don't want to overwork. You don't want to overwork. There's already a lot of tightness. There's already a lot of stagnation. So overworking can be detrimental. So we work this point here pretty good. And again, this point here is right in the belly of Piriformis. The Piriformis muscle, the deeper muscle in the glutes. And then after that, I'm just going to bring in another aspect of body work from the Thai tradition, where we do a little bit more sustained compression. And this is a nice simple one where you can use your body weight to get maximum compression here. So I'm going to simply put the palm of my hand on the area here between the two bony landmarks, the sacrum and the head of the greater trochanter or the femur. And I'm just going to come and just sit on my hand a little bit, just to, is that pressure's okay? It gives some nice sustained pressure. So you can see this nice line that's being presented by my extended arm, and I've shifted my weight over towards the midline, so my weight is coming right down into the soft tissue. And you can just sort of hang out here for a little bit. And always take notice of either the person's breath or if they're trying to tap out, which is also a good indicator if it's too much pressure. You want to work in their tolerable range. And then I'm just going to ease out of that. And the other thing that Lucy was talking about in her pain, and this came out, I think, more in the assessment, which is another way of verifying that assessment is so important. That, we talk about things right away, oh, my shoulder hurts here, this or that, whatever the pain, but if you put them in motion, the person in motion, it brings up a lot of different aspects. And then we're dealing with different dimensions, so it's more likely that more information will present itself. So in that assessment, and it was the simple forward fold that we did earlier in the video, she said that she has some tightness in her posterior leg, or the hamstrings if you're talking about the muscles. So we're just going to do a little compression of the hamstring. So hamstrings are located here, just below the hip, and they go right to the knee. So we're just going to address this area. Now, how to address this area, you can do in a lot of different ways. Sometimes I'll use the flat of my fist and just come straight down like this. Right. And I would repeat that several times. And again, focusing on your breath so that you don't fatigue. You could also use your knee, where you could come and just do some nice sustained pressure. This has the advantage of taking complete pressure off of your arms, but also utilizing your body weight a little clearer, because you can just see this line coming right through. The pressure's okay. And I'm going to work my way down towards the knee. Now I'm holding on to Lucy's foot, both to help in my own stability, to keep me upright, but also if I compress and then just lower the leg a little bit, that actually helps with the length of the muscle, because you're pinning the muscle, and then when you lower the leg, it sort of stretches the muscle out. So it's commonly referred to as pin and stretch. And if this isn't accommodating for you, you can come up, right, and use the flat of your foot and just lower your weight right into the hamstring. Very nice. Pressure's okay. And as you come closer to the knee, I would suggest easier pressure, but what we're talking about here is integrative work, so different approaches to try to get the same effect the most efficiently. Right. Okay, so we address this one side not only with assessment, but also with some movement, some compression, and we applied some, or introduced in some cases, some of the common acupressure points here in the lower back and the hip. And in part 2, which I hope you'll join me in, we're going to get a little more specific to the other side because we want to increase and encourage balance in Lucy's body. But also we're going to do a slightly different position and end with some of the same assessment stretches so that we can see results. Okay, so thank you again. I hope you'll join us in part 2 of our Integrative Bodywork. Thank you. So if you'd like to view the full course, it's available now on wellnessplus.tv, or you could watch it for free with Amazon Prime. And if you'd like to learn more about this type of bodywork, you can go to my website, which is blackswanproductions.com, and it'll give you some different information and articles about how to hopefully improve and integrate some of these techniques into your daily practice. Okay, thank you.
With hundreds of videos that you can stream on virtually any device to help you reduce stress, lose weight, or just improve your health and well-being overall. At wellnessplus.tv, we are dedicated to helping you on your health and wellness journey. Join wellnessplus.tv to find hundreds of videos to help you improve the health of your body and your mind. wellnessplus.tv. Get well, feel better.